Welcome inside another episode of Point to the Passer. It is December 6th, Saturday, also happens to be my co host's birthday. So I just want to start off the show by saying a big happy 42nd to Jonathan. Buddy, 2 years ago we celebrated your 40th, had the whole crew come on, give a little shout out. 2 years later, we are celebrating the Joel James, Jerry Stackhouse, Sean May birthday. How are you feeling today, and what would be the best gift of all as we watch a few games in the background that we have our eye on?
I mean, your background's a pretty good gift. It's been a really good day already. We have some
Head to
good
YouTube to check it out.
yeah, celebration with the family as well. So that makes for a good birthday. But when there's, birthday in December, it's college basketball season. So if Carolina's not playing, that's the ultimate gift, right? Is a Carolina victory. But we got Duke, Michigan State right now, so I need Sparty to pull off a birthday favor for me here down the stretch. We've got Michigan State 51-48, under 8 timeout. And then if that happens first, and then NC State finds a way to lose to UNC Asheville at home, that's all you could really ask for, I think, for a 42nd birthday series of presents. That's all I need. So come on, Sparty, and let's go UNC Asheville in Raleigh.
We're pretty hopeful over here. And of course, the best gift on top of those two would be a big win over Georgetown tomorrow. 5 o'clock game time, the Hoyas come to Chapel Hill. Obviously, there's already been a lot of comparisons to this 82 season as Carolina knocked off Kentucky and Kansas, getting big wins over two blue blood programs. And obviously, a win over Georgetown would feel pretty good as well and remind us of a national championship. Long way to go for this team. Lots of highs, lots of lows over the last couple of weeks. The last time we were on, we were previewing Michigan State and had some high hopes for that on Thanksgiving Day. We all know that did not turn out as we expected. But the Kentucky game, a lot of people kind of maybe thought that would be an L. You know, it's a tough matchup over in Lexington, but the guys grinded it out in a win that is similar to the Hubert team with Harrison Ingram and Cormac Ryan, where you saw a lot of those gritty games going into ACC play in the 60s. That's a game that Carolina classically maybe has not won under Hubert Davis. So we're going to dive into that as well. But first, Jonathan, I just want to kind of start with your thoughts on, we can throw in St. Bonaventure in there as well, and Fort Myers tip-off, overall vibes, and then we will get into a little bit more Kentucky analysis and jump over to previewing Georgetown.
Yeah, I mean, I think you go back to Fort Myers, it's still a team that's trying to find their identity on offense, especially without Seth Trimble right now. And they've still had moments where in both of those games against the Bonnies and against Michigan State, where the other team goes on a run and they find it difficult, Carolina does, to really stop that run. And it's tended also to be when we've had our reserves in the game, and that was really the case in both of those games where, especially against Michigan State, we got off to a pretty hot start, looked really good on offense, make some substitutions, and all of a sudden we just lose our footing. Here comes Michigan State, and they were more or less in the driver's seat from that point on in the game. So it was good to see that flip a little bit against Kentucky, where we started pretty ugly on offense, and it was the reserves that gave us some traction with Dixon and Powell hitting some big threes. So you like to see that. I think that's going to be important, even as Trimble comes back, is you need these other guys. You need that top really 8 right in your rotation with 3 guys coming off the bench, whoever that's going to be. You'd expect the Powell for sure, and then probably Dixon still off the bench, and then whoever that eighth person is, whether Luka ends up coming off the bench or if Jaren rolls to the bench when Seth comes in. Bonnie's, I was happy to see the way that we did respond in the second half. I thought they really did put that game away, and that's not a bad team by any means. They have a couple of guys there. Frank Mitchell on the inside is definitely a tank on the interior and showed that. And then Simmons on the outside was as advertised, hit some tough shots. So it was one of those where we did what we needed to do in the second half to put that game away. Michigan State, look, I mean, I think that team is not what we expected coming into the season. They are better than what I think nationally, what I thought this Michigan State team was going to be with some of the pieces that they lost. Credit to Tom Izzo and the development, credit to the coaching, just the discipline, the defensive intensity and attention to detail that they bring. and they wore Carolina down. We just really did not have answers in the second half. I thought they made more adjustments than we did, and you start to see some familiar concerns offensively where we get stagnant, we get a little bit too much into late clock situations, high ball screens, where you have the guards having to make a lot happen late in the clock, and we do not have the personnel to really have that be effective offense for us. The other part is just like flat out we missed a lot of shots. Now, granted, like I think some of that is related to the offensive flow and the improvements that need to be made. So there's a lot I think learned at that point, and then going into Kentucky, which is offensively, there's a lot to work on for Carolina, a ton to fix. What you're encouraged about with Kentucky is they hung in there, they didn't give up, like you said. The fight, it was a gross game. Like number one takeaway, I think the game second half was just this is ugly. Both you and I are texting back and
Hmm.
forth, like if we stay up and we lose this game, how frustrated we're gonna be because
Right.
this has just been frustrating to watch. Uh, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the second takeaway for me, it really should be the first takeaway, is that it felt like that was going to be a game that somebody was going to lose more than they won, and Carolina at the end made the big plays to take it. They won that game at the end, whether that was Bogovats hitting that big three from the corner, and then certainly Dixon with his unbelievable step back when things broke down to go up by two, 64 to 62, and then the layup he had to go
Hmm.
back ahead when Kentucky tied it right back up. So I was very impressed with just the plays that they made when it really mattered, and some of the set plays that Hubert called out of timeouts that really were the difference as well.
Yeah, obviously that's a huge game to win because you never want to drop back to back, of course, early in the season. That loss against Michigan State was really difficult to watch on Thanksgiving. It just felt like the team had so much to work on. But to get that road win, absolutely huge. And the big thing for me, and we talked to Isaac Shade about this in the offseason, and I believe I brought it up in terms of depth with our offense, is that you're going to need somebody to step up. We're hopefully going to have some distribution and scoring and a lot of guys who can fire. That just hasn't been the case early on. And under Hubert and under Roy and kind of classically Carolina, it feels like a lot of times that it takes a Carolina team a little while to get their footing, figure out their offense. This goes for all of college basketball, and maybe I pay attention to it more because it's Carolina, but you're figuring out your offense and figuring out who's going to be that guy to step up. Derek Dixon did that. The guard play has been a question for us. You obviously look down low and you have Henry and Caleb who are just absolutely dominating the paint. That is not the concern. That is a classic Carolina look, but it's who's going to be the leader and how can we run the offense where it doesn't become stagnated at times. Derek did that in a incredibly high pressure situation on the road in a time that Carolina really, really needed it. And that three step back was beautiful. We tweeted out a video that was almost frame for frame similar to the RJ Davis last three that he had in his 42-point game against Miami. Now, don't take this out of context. I'm not blowing up Derek Dixon into RJ Davis by any means, but it's nice to see that that skill level and that kind of game that he has is developing. But that drive to the basket, 18 seconds, 10 seconds left, whatever it was, um, is even more impressive to me, just given the level of pressure in that moment. So nice to see him. It sounds like Seth is on the up and up and recovering on a pretty healthy timeline. There has not been a date released that I've seen that's a specific target. Obviously, they're not going to want to detail that out too much, but it sounds like he's progressing very, very well. So that'll be a huge one. But to not drop that game against Kentucky without one of your lead guards in Seth Trimble is just a really impressive feat. I've got some stats here because I'm obviously an analytics guy, but looking at some of the player stats in terms of points, rebounds, and assists, where Seth was averaging, he would be third in the team in scoring, second to, well, third in the team in rebounding, behind only Caleb and Henry, and second in the team in assists right now. And so you think about and remember what you're losing in him, and then think that Carolina went into Lexington and grinded out a 67-64 win. You got to feel happy with where we're at. The shots are going to fall. Jay Billis didn't seem to have any concern earlier in the season about our offense. I disagreed with that when he said that. I said, the defense is there. You got the length. You got these two guys on the interior, but this team defensively has been pretty consistent and pretty strong, especially when you think that we're only a few weeks into the season still. So, um, in terms of offensive threat, where do you think we need to develop? And I hope we see it in the Georgetown game tomorrow. But for me personally, it's some of these guys really stepping up. But in addition to just individual performances, I'm not looking for the clear out. I'm looking for consistent motion combined with a low number of turnovers. Because actually, against Michigan State, we only had 8 turnovers, and that's the loss because we held on to the ball, but we weren't getting good shot selection. So it's not a one for one kind of thing. But hopefully, if we can limit turnovers and keep that consistent offensive motion, Georgetown, pretty solid team, but should be a win in Chapel Hill tomorrow with some hopefully very positive takeaways to end your birthday weekend.
Let's hope so. Yeah, let's hope they can build some positive momentum. Hopefully, the Kentucky win is a catalyst in the way that like they didn't. I don't think they felt like they played close to their best, especially offensively, like we talked about. But that now you've got that out of the way, and you can just start to play and lose yourself in the game a little bit more. I haven't done this yet. I do at some point want to do this, where at least from memory, if memory serves, under Hubert Davis, Carolina has started out slow from three. It feels like almost every year. And then they uptick towards the end of the year and kind of settle around 35, 36%.
Hmm.
But this is something we've talked about over the last 2 years of like, are we concerned about the three-point shooting when we thought this was going to be a good three-point shooting team? We start out slow. So I think there's some bigger trends there, to be honest. And I think there's some bigger critiques you could probably make about the offense and go into that. I'm with you. I think they really do need to focus on whether it's sets or other. They just don't prioritize freelance motion the way that Roy did, and that's kind of what it is. But you've got to have off-ball movement, whatever that looks like, because that's when this team is at its best, and your shooters can really benefit from having open catch and shoot threes. I think what I'd like to see more of that we started to see in the Kentucky game that we hadn't really seen outside of a flash here or there was Henry Vasar, especially in the second half. He was nasty, man. Like he's does not have a
He's a
reputation
dude.
of being a physical guy. He's obviously
Yeah.
very skilled. He's had a great start to the year, but he was bullying guys in that game, and that was the
And
first
we need
time
that.
we did. And he, I mean, the one time I think it was Garrison. I want to say, who's a pretty solid. He's not a defensive elite specialist by any means on the interior, but Vasar just moved him out of the way, and he was not on the block. He was beyond the block at that point. And there were a couple other plays where he just took an elbow, I think, to Moreno on the way in on a post move. Uh, so I would say, obviously, our strength is inside. In addition to finding those guys through the different actions and movement we've used, just get the ball down to the block to Henry. I think that's something you can go to a little bit more. He's
Hmm.
got pretty good footwork down there. I think that's an asset we can use more. And there were times where I think there was one time on the broadcast where uh, Jay or Dick or both pointed out that Kyan was not getting him the ball. And so I think from an entry pass perspective, like you got to find these guys, you got to do that work early. So I would like to see that because that's going to make it a lot easier for us offensively. Should also open up more shooting lanes, especially not having Seth Trimble's rim pressure available right now. The other thing to continue is 20 offensive rebounds against Kentucky is pretty unbelievable. 22
Yeah.
second chance points. So that is something that I mean that's off the charts. You're not going to get that every night, but you're going to continue to get offense from that area as well. I'd also say I'd like to see some actions for Caleb Wilson just to get him some easy looks so that he's not having to feel like he has to put everything on his shoulders and force as much. He's been taking some really difficult shots, understandably so. Like sometimes when things have broke down, it's like, okay, I need to make something happen. So again, would like to see a little bit more crisp movement, crisp action so that we don't get in a situation where guys feel like I've got to take somebody ISO
Hmm.
off the dribble and Caleb's a star player, so he's going to take that mentality. It's
Yeah.
just been more difficult for him. So those are a couple of things I'd like to see because I do agree. I think the shots will start to fall, but they've got to be in the flow of the offense. They've got to be in the flow of the offense, and they've got to be in rhythm. I think they've been a little bit rushed. Kyan, I think there's confidence there. Luca, I think sometimes it's just a little quick, and part of that is him adjusting. But he hit three against Kentucky, and he hit that big one in the corner. So I think it's also a process. I think you're going to see it hopefully be a little bit smoother against Georgetown. Um, But I'll be honest, there are just lingering questions about fit of the scheme, and Hubert's kind of reverting back to some things that he's comfortable doing in the past. So I don't know that this is going to be a top 10 or even top um, 25 offensive team in the country. I think they can maybe get there. But those are the lingering questions I would have. Um, but I do think it can look a lot better. When the ball goes in the basket, hopefully it does tomorrow, it'll definitely look a lot better, especially from the perimeter.
Yeah, I totally agree with you about Caleb Wilson. I know on Thanksgiving, watching that game against Michigan State, it just got very frustrating because it felt like he was trying to do everything at once because the rest of the offense wasn't there. And as elite of a player as he is, as you mentioned, as we've all seen, you can't just have your offense be this one guy and trust him to hit that fadeaway step back every time or get the foul call every time or finish at the rim unless it's a high flying dunk. Then we're about 100% for those. But for the most part, Caleb's done, more than enough. And in those games when he's not scoring as much, he's on the boards, as you mentioned. We've had 40 plus rebounds in, I think, all but one game, and that was the Michigan State game where we only had 30 or so. And that's just a classic Carolina thing is to crash the glass and you win games. Like this has been a through and through point for, decades at this point, especially offensive rebounding. And you're right, we're not going to get 20 a night, but in a lot of these games, we've had numbers in the, 12 to 16, even 18 range. I think against Radford was 18 rebound game. So the size is there. It's the offense and some questions around that. I agree with you in terms of getting Vesar more touches down low. That only ends up freeing Caleb up a little bit more. Guys like Jaren and Luca, I still think we'll get there with them. And one of the bright spots I will say is Jonathan Powell. I enjoyed seeing more minutes from him last game and coming in off the bench for a little bit more. If he can hit a couple of those threes and be a little bit of a perimeter threat, it just spreads the floor out even more. But what I will be most curious about, and I've kind of talked to you a little bit about this, and I want to get your take on the pod now, is what does the balance of Derek Dixon versus Kyan Evans look like? And we kind of chatted. I think Kyan's still your starter right now. I think Hubert has that loyalty, wants to continue to see him develop. He hasn't done anything inherently wrong to be kicked off of a starting lineup, and I don't want to overreact to one performance from Derek Dixon. All that to say, I'm not the coach. I don't have the answers, but it is nice to have two guards you can trust and know are good passers and know can hit some threes. If one of them's having an off game, you maybe kind of shift, lean into the other and find that balance. But what's your take on the Derek Dixon factor here and how important is that to have someone like that as your backup point guard, especially with Seth out, as we've mentioned?
I think it's a huge development, obviously, not just for winning that game, which looks even more important that they got the win after Kentucky got blasted by almost 40 points in Gonzaga
Hmm.
Friday night. But I think it's also important because Kyan hasn't found his footing yet. You're going to need both of these guys. So the nice luxury you have now is I agree. I agree with I mean Hubert expect Hubert to start Kyan. I think that's the right move. You it does feel like a confidence issue with Kyan right now. And we even talked about this when he came in that he had taken some time to get comfortable when he started as a freshman at Colorado State. He was a little bit overwhelmed by the just the transition. And then last year, even it took him some time before, that first 8 to 10 games, and then he really took off. Um, so you're gonna need the best version of this team is with a high level Kyan Evans playing in the backcourt, whether that's point guard, off the ball, whatever combination that looks like. So you stick with them, in my opinion. And then in terms of the minute distribution, I think it depends on the game. It felt right for this game where it was about 25 minutes for Derek Dixon to 15 for Kyan. Georgetown, we'll see. Is that more like 20 to 20? Or if Kyan gets hot, do you stick with him a little bit longer? I think that really is going to depend by game. I think it's also easy to say, like, okay, now we've seen Derek Dixon do this. This is going to be, and we've seen this so many times from whether it's a Page or a Barry in the past of somebody who just took off and had a pedigree coming in, that now he's just going to do that every game and he's going to win the job. He's been up and down. He's still a freshman, so I don't think we can just bank on him having a huge performance or hitting game-winning shots
Hmm.
um, going forward. Uh, so all that to say that it really, to me, it's a game by game situation. But I love what I see from him. He's very under control. He's very polished, great basketball IQ. He feels, it seems like he feels more comfortable, I think, distributing, kind of getting in the lane. He's just bigger, which is part of it. And his vision, being able to open things up, I think, uh, on the inside. But then the other thing that I like from him late in the game where he had a really nice pick and roll action with Vasar for that massive dunk from Henry on the
Hmm.
roll.
Yeah.
Um, Henry Vasar is an amazing PNR player, and we haven't had so far a point guard that seems to be really comfortable in the pick and roll. I think Dixon can give you more of that, and that can really unleash some of what Henry can do because he's most dangerous. Like even though he's was bullying guys against Kentucky, he's most dangerous still in space. So I like to see more of that from Dixon. I also would love to see both these guys out there together a little bit more. I don't as much as I like Luca.
Hmm.
I don't think
Yeah.
that you have to run Luca out there 35 minutes a game, even 30. Like depending on the
Yeah.
game, you can get him down to more like between 25 to 30 minutes. And the early on-off numbers, although there aren't a lot of minutes with Dixon and Kine together, they've been pretty good. So that may be a way to unlock Evans a little bit more, get him comfortable. When he's in rhythm, the shot still has been good. He's had games where he's hit a couple and got rolling, and so that's really what you want to see. And I'd like to see Derek shoot it a little bit more. I think he's still at one point he was like 50% on very low volume from three, but
Mm.
get actually be hunting your shot a little bit more. And I think that I will say, like, I think that moment at the end of the game where he said after the game, this is the first time I really lost myself in the game. I think that could be a boost of confidence for him. So
Hmm.
I don't necessarily expect him to have an even performance every time, but I do expect him to be more of a factor. So that's kind of what I see. But ideally, you get both of those guys rising at the right time, and that's just even better problem to have going forward. You're really going to need both of them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think all great points. And I want to kind of shift to Georgetown now in terms of mentioning those kind of lineup changes. And what does Georgetown look like? How do you think we match up against them? And who do you have your eye on for Sunday's game?
Yeah, so I mean their perimeter is they're not a great three-point shooting team. By great, they're not very good at all. They're pretty low ranked
So
from
as I told
three.
you, they're going to come in on fire to the Dean Dome, of course. So
Yeah,
fully
that's
expect that,
that's
Heels fans. We
that
know. We
is
know how
yeah,
this
that
goes.
is almost a given, but I think what you would expect if they come in like they have been the rest of the year is they have two guards that can really get into the paint, and we didn't talk about this as much with Michigan State, where Jeremy Fears just got into the paint at will and did pretty much whatever he wanted, scoring and facilitating to the rest of the team. So that's something I'd look for. Our perimeter defense without Seth Trimble has been a little bit more spotty. So you want to see guys like Kyle Evans, Dixon, and Luca all be able to really hang with Malik Mack, who's a Harvard transfer. This is his second year at Georgetown. He settled in. He's their second leading scorer. And he's somebody who's skilled. He can get into the lane. KJ Lewis, excuse me, is their leading scorer just by a tick or two, and he's from Arizona from the last 2 years. So also somebody who's very athletic, can get downhill. So that would be my concern is can you get these guys, keep these guys out of the paint enough um, so that we're not having that issue of giving up some easy ones. The good news is we have a wall at the rim, so that is definitely different compared to last year for sure. And
Hmm.
so it does make it more difficult on guys not being able to get all the way to the rim. But if you have a free mid-range jump shot, as we saw from Fears, these guys at this level are going to knock that down the majority of the time. So that's something I'd be looking for. The other piece I would say is we don't really know what we're going to expect from them on the inside. Their most impactful big guy, Vince Iwuchukwu, who was transferring it as well. I think he was last at it was either St. John's or Southern Cal. All these multiple transfers, man, it's hard to keep up. But
Yeah, St.
um,
John's and then USC before that.
okay,
Hmm.
so he got hurt after I think the fourth game of the year. He was actually coming off the bench. So they'll still start with Julius Halafanua, which is a familiar name for Carolina fans from a couple years ago, from New Zealand, international player who we were looking at that hole in the middle. He ends up going to Georgetown instead. But he has more or less split time with Vince before the injury and had not been as impactful. Although since the injury happened, the last 4 games, he's had 16 points 3 times out of 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the one time that he, uh, I think it was maybe like 5 points, it was not as impactful, was against Miami, the one high major team they played in a loss. So and that's what I'm looking for is how does he respond to going up against Vasar and Wilson?
Mm-hmm.
He just has not been as good when they've played the higher level competition. He's still a pretty inexperienced player. He got hurt last year as well. This is his second year. So, but he's a big guy, 7 feet, something like 260, 270 pounds, physical. I won't go into the weeds, Craig, on his story, but he's a very fascinating. If you want to look it up, he's being from New Zealand. Rugby is the sport there, so he definitely is somebody who's going to embrace a physical style of play, and this team overall embraces that style. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something I look for. But I would say like this is a game that Caleb especially has got to be a little frustrated after 2 pretty inefficient
Mm-hmm.
games from the floor, to say the least. No dunks in the last game for the first time. So if I were the rims at the Smith Center, I would go into witness protection for this game because I think Caleb is coming for the rims early and often, and that's what I would more than anything expect to see is on offense, us just going inside and trying to really send a message. And then defensively, can we keep them out of the lane? Can we keep them from getting easy ones that way and getting open mid-range jump shots?
Yeah, I appreciate that breakdown. For me, I definitely have my eyes on the Derek Dixon and Kyan Evans dynamic to see how not only how Derek continues to improve, but how Kyan responds to that kind of pressure and, seeing one of his teammates kind of stepping up and, he wants to be in there every game and battle for minutes and he wants to improve and help his team wherever he can. So let's see what kind of response he has. He has shown a lot of flashes of, really nice stroke from three as well as some really good assists, especially early on when started seeing, yeah, the Carolina run out is back. We're here, we're pushing it up. He was really the quarterback behind several of those runouts and had some really, I think, underrated passes, including in the Kansas game. So no small feat for that, especially, I think that was his second game in a Carolina uniform. So you hope that that kind of develops. We mentioned a little bit of a slow start at Colorado State. Maybe it just takes some time to fit in, but in a way, maybe this relieves the pressure off of him, knowing that he's got a number two right there alongside him, and hopefully that will overall benefit the team. But the rare Sunday game tomorrow, no Sunday night hoops from the ACC anymore. Used to be something to look forward to in the weekend, but this is kind of a nice one to have. 5 o'clock slate should be a packed Dean Dome and a classic matchup, 1982 rematch. So no Patrick Ewing this time though.
No Patrick Ewing, probably no 4 goaltendings in a row or whatever it
That's
was to
still
start
one of
the.
the more ridiculous stats when I rewatch that game. It's like I cannot believe that that actually happened. It's like, what are you doing, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. In theory, the strategy makes sense. Like, all right, let's intimidate these guys, but you essentially
Right.
spot them that many points in a close game. Yeah, looking back on it, it's one of those hindsight things, but it should be fun just to have that. It's going to be a retro day in the Smith Center in terms of wear your retro jerseys from the Carolina basketball offices. I think they're going to be doing some, I would imagine, different things with the video board or other things that are going on, maybe even some of the people they have in attendance. So that's pretty cool, and a program with a lot of history that is on the way back up. So it should be a fun game. And it's not something that Carolina can't overlook Georgetown. Georgetown's good enough that they could come into the Smith Center if Carolina is
Hmm.
not playing well and win this game. They have a win over Clemson early in the year and against Maryland, both those games with Iwachukwu playing really well. So, again, they're a little bit different team right now, but you can't underestimate them in that sense. So hopefully it's offensively, I think, is what you want to see Carolina get back to a little bit more of a more even performance, more efficient performance. Defensively, I think you have this team's identity. I mean, this is getting closer to the Hubert Davis blueprint from 2 years ago in terms of
Hmm.
how they're going to win games, how they're going to be most effective is they're going to guard you as hard as they can for the length of the shot clock. They're not going to force a lot of turnovers, but they are going to play really hard, be physical on the defensive end, and then defensive rebounding those are the keys. And I think you have somebody, Caleb Wilson to me is like a Harrison Ingram, plus in terms of just you've seen the number of
Just
rebounds, the double
gritty.
doubles
Yeah.
that he's getting. Vesar again, I mean, somebody who he literally didn't have a double digit rebound game in his career prior to coming to Carolina. He's got four double doubles in 8 games.
It's
Uh,
incredible. Yeah.
so
What a
so
fit.
that is the blueprint is how they play on defense, and how they adjust. So they tend to switch almost everything early in the season, and then Hubert starts to modify that as they go. We're starting to see that a little bit more. Um, so that part I think is the identity, and then you're willing to just win some ugly games when the offense gets stagnant. Um, I'm still hopeful we can change that offensively, and I do think Seth coming back does just this team just is missing something, and I think something to watch is can they, like you said, can they get into transition more? I don't think there's a reason to wait for Seth to get back. I get that he is one of your most
Hmm.
dynamic athletes with Wilson, so that changes your ability to run, but a lot of it is more that we get into a set and we slow things down on our own accord rather than in the Kansas game, we were doing things that we hadn't seen in a while. That was vintage Roy, where made basket, we're hit ahead, we're out and running. And so I don't wait for Seth to come back to do more of that. I
Hmm.
think I would say that I'd love to see that. They're not going to be a Roy Williams team in transition. They're not going to be one of the top transition teams in the country, uh, but we can run more and we can do more. Some of the pressure in the backcourt, force some turnovers. I get Hubert Davis plays the way he does defensively, but we can play off a few turnovers as well. So I'd like to see a little bit more transition game, even though I know that that's just not going to be how this team is going to play primarily, regardless of what Hubert Davis says or how he wants to play. He just has not shown that. And the tendency throughout the year is to start to slow down. Even last year, we started out really fast, and
Hmm.
then it slowed down as the year went on. And part of that is just how he runs the offense, and that is what it is. But so let's get in transition a little bit more. Let's do that by design off made baskets. I like to see some of that tomorrow night.
Yeah, I'm fully with you. Transition game under control, limit those turnovers, and then we should come out on top. And of course, if you get into the half court set, then don't act like it's a transition and like you have to do everything one on one. That's when you pull it back out, start getting some screens, get it to the guys down low, make that kind of bucket happen. So that's a few things we've got our eye on. Jonathan, I'm sorry to report, and I'm sure you're watching, that Duke did not give you the birthday gift that you wanted. 66-60 victory up in East Lansing.
Yeah, they rarely cooperate with what I want. So I just
Yeah,
saw
it's
the
not
score.
surprising, is it?
Yeah, it's frustrating because this is a really good Michigan State team, and I did actually think they were going to win that game. Um, Duke, like it's funny that watching them so far, and granted, I get that I'm coming from a place of like usually hate watching. I'm not blown away with their team. Like last year, you saw stretches where it was like, okay, you can kind of see
Hmm.
where this is why they're dominating the way they are. They just find ways to close out these games. So it feels like they've been in these close games against the good teams they've played. And then down the stretch, they just find ways to win. And that's been the Boozers' MO before coming into college, too. So can't get that part, but UNC Asheville's still alive. They're only down two at halftime. That would be hilarious. In some ways, that would be even better because that would
Be a
be
treat.
I don't think that's going to happen either. I think they're going to blow them out in the
No.
second half, but there's still hope. There's still hope there, so we'll see what happens.
We're hanging on. And of course, as we said, the number one birthday present would be tomorrow. Georgetown victory, a full team effort, and a cover the spread. Like I don't want to grind it out victory at home. I'm ready to see some flashes and some other guys step up and get into a really good rhythm where I come out and I say, that felt good.
Yeah, Hubert, you can be a really nice guy and blow some of these teams out. It would be okay.
Right.
So we would like to see that. I also just want to say big picture because we talk a lot about it in the offseason. If you had told us we would be 7-1 at this point, we would all take it. I don't think
Hmm.
anyone would hesitate, and It matters less about like how it's happened at this point that it has happened. That are 7-1. They're in the driver's seat to have put together, finish off a very impressive non-conference that puts them exactly in the position where they want to be going into an ACC schedule that, as we talked about the ACC last show, has been better and proved that through the SEC challenge. That even though the SEC narrowly wins the challenge in the end after the second
Gave it away,
day
man.
went sideways for the ACC 1-6 on that Wednesday. But there were still some really important wins that happened across the conference.
Yeah.
Notre Dame gets a win against TCU, I think it was last night on the road, so they backed up their win against Missouri in the challenge. There's going to be some more opportunities this year in ACC play. So I feel really good about where the team is with a lot to still figure out with Tremble coming back. I think they can be a lot of fun. But I am hoping let's just see offensively. Let's just figure some things out here because those long stretches without a basket are hard to watch. I still don't know how Kentucky went more than 10 minutes without a basket and didn't lose the lead the entire time. So glad that game's in our rear view with the W, and let's see the offense really go to work here tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, it was unfortunate to see us drop the SEC challenge, but quick shout out to Cal for their win over Utah in the ACC Big 12 challenge. Want to know.
Hey, and listen, like one of those teams could be in the SEC or
For a
or
minute,
the
I
other could
thought
be.
Utah had made it into the SEC with me just missing it because conference realignments are
I
all over the
honestly,
place. And then it clicked. Yeah.
I did the same thing. I had to do the same
Yeah.
thing. I was like, wait, is this one of the games? No, no, no. Okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know. Next year it might be.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see.
Anything else from you before we wrap up? I know we've got Ohio State on the horizon and a couple games in between then with ETSU and is it USC Upstate that we
Upstate.
play? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. ETSU should be. Yeah, there's another game Carolina should win, and I think will. But they've been a really good mid-major team so far this year. They've done some good things, so that's a good test at the mid-major level. Yeah, Ohio State will get there when we get there. That loss to Pitt still is going to be an anchor for them. I think Pitt's just not good
Hmm.
this year, but they're gonna be tough, and they upset Kentucky last year in the CBS Sports Challenge, so you got to be ready for that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so a few things coming up. I mean, I guess real quick we can talk about Rob Doster, field of 68, tweeted yesterday. Should Carolina be concerned about Caleb Wilson? He put out stats to show that he's leads the country in dunks, but he also leads the country in missed dunks, and that his point per attempt on layups is one of the lowest in the country. Um, that was a classic. Like we know what you're doing here. And he
Yeah,
got his
I'm gonna
clicks.
lose a lot of sleep over that now that that's planted in my head, man. I don't know how I'm gonna even pass out tonight. It's gonna be tough.
Yeah, it's hard to take a lot of uncontested layups when you dunk all of those potential uncontested layups and are left with just three people hanging on you and taking a difficult four shot that's considered a layup. So the answer is no. No one's concerned.
Correct.
Um, yes, Caleb has some things he can refocus on now that the level of competition's shifting a little bit to get back to being more efficient, taking better shots, being within the flow of the offense, feeling double teams a little bit better for the first time,
Hmm.
really like having consistent double teams. But no one's concerned there. He's got more work to do, but it's nothing in terms of like nobody's figured out a flaw in his game related to his ability to finish. If anything, that is the strength of his game, his ability to finish, and we've seen that consistently. Expect to see. Let's do over under dunks for the Georgetown game for Caleb. I'm gonna
Ooh,
set it at 4.5, which I know is high, but
it's aggressive. I like it though. I'm gonna go just under.
okay, I'm going over.
Of course, of course. I'd be happy to lose money on that. I'll just say that.
I think he gets 5. I think he's going
Okay.
big. I think it's gonna be a day where he's I would like to know what his wallpaper screen is going into this game. I think he's gonna have a little bit of a chip just about the efficiency piece and just like even maybe it's Rob Doster. Maybe the tweet is the
It,
lock screen. I hope that it is actually.
I feel like if he listens to this pod, which he surely doesn't, that I would be the lock screen for saying under, which is fine. If it motivates him to go over, then that's great, and I've done my part.
I hope that it is because then the screen would have "Happy Birthday, Jonathan" on it, and that would mean a lot to me. That Caleb is
You know,
thinking about my
so
birthday.
thoughtful. All right, well, maybe five, maybe six, maybe more. We'll see. I'll stick at four, and you'll take the over at five. So good stuff.
Yeah, I just want to hear some oohs and ahs in the Smith Center. I think that's what I'm
Yeah,
looking
get the
for.
hype
Is
back. I mean, that Kansas game was unreal when he was slamming it home. Right off the bat, our first possession on the rebound dunk. I haven't heard the Dean Dome that loud in a long time, and there's nothing better for those guys than playing in front of an energized crowd like that, which it will be.
it will a weekend game against a historic opponent like Georgetown, who is again they're on the way back up and should be at least they've got some high level guys on that team, so it should be a fun game. And you're now, I mean, we're as we get deeper into December and move into January, this is where the season really kicks up, and Carolina fans understand that too. This team is uh, they have some high goals that they still have in their sights that they still, based on what they've done so far, they can accomplish. So excited for this one. Excited for them to put a solid performance out there, get some of the kind of ugliness to the side offensively. Some of those the distaste of the offense from the last game and a half or so, and then start to build for when Trimble comes back. Hopefully,
Yep.
um, Ohio State might be a little bit early on the 20th, but definitely before the end of the year, I think is what they expect.
Yeah, having him back for that Florida State first ACC game
It'd be
would
big.
be phenomenal. Yeah. Yep, no easy games in the ACC. So, quick point out to close the show. We got two today. One of them is Derek Dixon for his excellent performance on the road from a true freshman. Pretty smooth for a freshman, as I will say. As the classic commentary goes. Yeah, he was sensational. Really took the team on his back. And the second, my friend, goes to you. Happy birthday. Glad we're on this pod together. And yeah, here's to another big Heels win on Sunday. Let's get it.
Here's to another one, and to Big Blue Nation, I'd just like to
Did you say
say,
blue or boo?
Big Blue
Big boo.
Nation. Yes, yes, it
Yeah,
was Big
yeah.
Blue Nation last
I just
night.
wanted to make sure I heard you right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I like that. Big Blue Nation. You've now felt the sting of the belt. So now that you felt the belt, sparkle, bedazzle, let's go Heels.
Shout out Tate Frazier for that Big Boo Nation beautiful tweet last night. Go Heels.
Go Heels.